So this presentation is, like, I need to mention that it's 2 weeks before my official defense. This is my way of preparing, so be aware. I read that I can do it probably, and it will not impact my future career. I think so. Let's start. And because there will be some things we need to go through. It will be quite hectic probably, but we will need to start with some sort of introduction, especially that we are going through a document that was aimed at Polish architecture society, people that were not entirely in the know when it comes to space architecture. So I was introducing a lot of space stuff to them, going from simple stuff even sometimes, and we will be going through them as well. But also we will be going through the history of analogs, how I see it, and then through state of research when it comes to analogs, criteria to evaluate those space analog habitats, and you will later tell me if this criteria is somehow valid. Then I will show you how I reviewed the analog space habitats, how the synthesis and interpretation went, and some conclusions that also include a form of typology. Not very complicated, but like the data here gathered here is the most important part, and typologies are usually very subjective. So this is an awesome topic to discuss later. So the thesis of work is that the current state of knowledge and available literature allow us to identify some sort of what determines habitats, shapes, volumes, floor plans, functions, and that's one thing. The other thing, it will help us create or find typologies. There can be different typologies. I am focusing only on the one that I was interested in, but you can always create a different typology based on the same data in regard to what interests you. So that's also something important to remember. This is something that I showed you yesterday from second addendum to Mars Design Reference Architecture. And I will be referring to that quite a lot when it comes to operations, technology, and science made in analog habitats. What I didn't show yesterday, I think, this definitions for analog test and analog site. And analog test is important because this is what is here. Like we would say Pangea, when ESA is training astronauts with geological training. Those are tests in some way. Yeah, you don't have elaborate mission architecture or habitats. You are focused on performing a task in a certain simulated manner, and the whole mission simulations are analog missions with some sort of scenario or immersion, let's say. Okay. This is what how I view it. And when it comes to very brief history of analogs, oh yeah, the wall of text, I will be very quick with it. The first analog mission that was mentioned, obviously the NASA was using a certain analog situations to train astronauts at Mercury 7 and so on. But the scientific analog mission was organized by Wernher von Braun. A week before Apollo 11 started. We will go to that later. And then I am even adding Philip Zimbardo Stanford Prison experiment that happened in 1971, because NASA till this day is using this as a cornerstone for all the ethic approvals, and when you are doing NASA courses, how to perform human-rated studies, they are always citing Zimbardo. This is quite important because his study added immersion. So not every analog study has immersion. When you are going to MDRS or to FMARS, you are really in an extreme environment that you're fighting for survival, for example. But those kind of studies that we are doing, for example, in LunAres or Mars 500 simulation, they had a certain degree of immersion that impacts the behavior of people and mission control. And this is exactly what happened in Stanford experiment. And so this is partially a cornerstone for this kind of studies. Oh, I need to breathe again, just like yesterday. Well, all right. But you see, I think you see where I'm going. This is something that NASA is still using, even if that was not space mission simulation. It was a prison simulation, but the results were very, very impactful for the whole human behavior studies. In 1972, Soviet Union created a BIOS-3 biotechnological habitat with some food production. They were isolating people there, and this is the same year where we stopped flying to the moon. Apollo program was over, and the financing for those kind of analogs ended basically. And this is where the Mars Underground comes in. So the group of different researchers, engineers from NASA, from where also Robert Zubrin comes from, and then later he created his Mars Direct mission architecture. Then we are going through biosphere, like the private people are trying to do missions. Then in thousands, Mars Society creates FMARS and MDRS, and later NASA does the DRATS, then the Mars 500 and so on and so on. But yeah, this is the overview how it went till 2015 when the definitions that I showed here finally were proposed. Okay. I will not be going through every single point here. I wanted to focus on interesting parts. So the first analog mission. Jacques Piccard was planning to use, he used his new submarine Ben Franklin to go along the Gulf Stream, and the mission started a week before Apollo 11 started its journey. So, Bernard von Braun convinced Jacques Piccard to, at Chester, Maine, a part of Bernard von Braun team member, to observe the rest of the crew during their 1 month underwater journey, because he knew that this is something that will be very needed, or this is a good analog for the future of human spaceflight, for longer missions that he already was planning and envisioning. So yeah, that was a first analog mission there. You can, if you go to this website at the very, somewhere there, you can go and read the whole Captain Journal. It's awesome. You can see that this is 16 July in 1969, and there is like Saturn V launching to the moon, when they were already 1 week underwater. So that was a quite interesting time. All right. So now we go through the criteria that I was trying to decide on, how to scale, like how to quantify what the habitats are made from and how they are made. And first thing is very simple. I had to introduce our readers to basic space logistics and the rocket equation, so they know that, oh, there is something like a fairing and you need to fit your volume and your mass in there if you want to go somewhere. So we can skip that. But then we are going into a bit more serious matter. So the NASA Space Mission Architecture Framework, or SMAF. And this is a wonderful document that helps you design your space mission. And it basically gives you like those 5 different major parts of your space mission: your science goals, your mission system architecture, your project and management, your resources, and also your mission environment. So also your stakeholders, or and the politics that is involved in every single mission. And I really saw some sort of correlation between like the proposed earlier analog activities, the scientific ones, technological ones, and operational ones. So the question is whether this is missing some parts here, and maybe analog activities should be simply one-to-one analogs to mission architecture, in fact. And this is exactly what happened a bit later when we consider Mars reference missions. But the whole this space mission architecture framework is such a wonderful document. You should all you should go and see it. It's easily available online, and it really indicates how different parts of the project relate to one another, and what is important for different people there. Okay, so mission architecture. The most important one for us is Mars Direct from 1991. This is when Robert Zubrin and David Baker proposed like a very low-cost mission to Mars, something that we know from the Martian movies. It was later adapted by NASA in the form of Mars Semi-Direct 2 years later. And that's quite important because this mission architecture that is quite simple, involves like very few launches, a simple setup of the hub, ascent vehicle, and so on, really translates to the first habitat that later the Mars Society, so the Robert Zubrin organization, created, F-Mars. And it's really like, this is an illustration from Mars Direct, and you just saw a presentation about F-Mars. And so the mission architecture really impacts what is your habitat when you're planning your mission or your campaign and whatnot. And then we are going to next missions that the NASA created. Those were those NASA Mars reference missions. There were like 5 of them. I think the last one was in like the 5th one is from 2009, and then those addendums were created till like in 2015. But those were also Mars missions. They were like very big documents. Like so those reference missions that in fact were roadmaps how the NASA should which project they should do in order to conduct the Mars mission. And in this framework, analog missions were also part of like way of determining whether we should go this or that way. And this is why Mars 500 happened. Yes, they wanted to test opposition class mission. That is maybe not this particular, but yeah, it involves like a short 30-day stay. And what they proposed, it was like those 520 days back then. So mission architecture impacted why certain habitat exists and how it looked like. Okay. So that was mission architecture. Now we need to go to space architecture. So the architectural stuff, most of the things I focus on can be basically found in Sarah Hauptling-Masberger and Olga Zbanova, great book that like every space architect should read, Space Architecture, Education for Engineers and Architects. It's a compendium of many different papers and original works by many different space architects. But like Olga Zbanova is from Texas University. She is running their space architecture school. Sandra is to Vienna, and yeah, she's also teaching new generations of space architects. Anyone that is working in space architecture probably knows their work very, very well. But yeah, they mentioned in the book that designing space architecture requires like looking into technological and environmental challenges, so life support systems, environmental hazards, behavioral and health challenges. all other visuals are like made by my team. I decided that it would be a good background, so enjoy. Okay, so this is one thing. Functional zoning, so how the functions are distributed, which functions shouldn't be together next to each other, like because of noise, because of smells, because of different factors, how to create a private space. Those were kind of things that space architecture is also dealing with. Then there are types of structures in space architecture, how they are constructed. So maybe the translation here is not maybe perfect, but yeah, it's all deals about the structure. So if it's a prefabricated metal container or inflatable structure, hybrid that we may, for example, know from Hera, like there is a structure, then there's inflatable on top of it. 3D printed structures, or even utilizing geological structures, so not something that we are familiar with, but those would be lava tubes or digging into soil. All right. This is a vision of Mamba that Christian was not showing before, because it doesn't have a shell. But it does illustrate quite nicely typology of space architecture proposed by the researchers. So the orbital habitats, they should be somewhere up. Planetary habitats, well, this is one. Mobile habitats, so this is a rover. Spacesuits, yeah, we have spacesuits here, and airlocks. And this is the typology of space architecture proposed, and you should and you could probably arrange that to every single structure that you know, to a certain degree. Or maybe structure can have double uses, but pretty much, yeah. Okay, then leaving this part of like leaving the book of Sandra and Olga, there are also TRLs. You know TRL like from 1 to 9. Like a typical for aerospace engineering, where 9 is like a flight-ready hardware, but there are also architectural specific ones. So there is a habitation readiness level proposed by Jan Connolly. I guess he's mostly known for Hera habitat, and he proposed this scale where like the very first. There are like basic assumptions like drawings and so on, and level 9 or thriller 9. It's an actual flight-proven system, something that we don't see in analog habitats, obviously. And I can see that analogs in this scale are probably like in the demonstration stage, so 5 or 6 HRL, which doesn't give us a lot of legroom here. That's one thing. But there's also a mock-up readiness level, or like technology readiness level for mock-ups proposed by Mark Cohen. And there you have only 6 stages because you are not going into like flying stages, obviously. But that gives us a lot more legroom there. Obviously, first you are dealing with concepts and drawings, but at some point, we are dealing with full-scale mock-ups made of metal, plastic, and so on. And so this is already a useful tool to determine how technologically advanced is your analog habitat, but it's not perfect. And I see that there's opportunity, and maybe and it should be discussed whether there should be a dedicated certain way to create like a larger scale or a different scale, maybe some sort of different technological readiness level for analogs. But I was definitely not dealing with this idea or issue. This may be something that needs to be done or discussed separately. Okay. Then I went into ergonomics from NASA historical missions. This is from Human Spaceflight Integration Handbook, as far as I know, and they were like analyzing total pressurized volume of the spacecraft and the mission direction for the spacecraft, but also for underwater habitats. But one is about volume, one is about floor area. So this is quite useful when we want to translate zero-G environment into a floor plan. This is what they try to do. How much volume you need for a certain length of the mission, and how much floor plan you need for the certain length of the mission. So I decided that, yeah, obviously we need to analyze floor plans volumes of the analogs. I think the last thing here is whether the technology is spin-in or spin-off or spin-out. So whether it was designed for the space sector or it was brought from outside. So whether like Hera was shaped and built for a certain purpose, or like we are using shipping containers simply to put the functions there. And this is, I think, quite important distinction there. All right, and it accumulated in this very long list of things that you need to analyze, or like you need to answer for each habitat, like the general data. That's quite easy, like the area of construction, who was the designer, investor, location, maybe something about its location. Then there we have technological features, so typology of space architecture, those like TRLs and those kind of things. Operational features, so number of crew members, like estimated like duration of the missions, like on average, or those kind of things. Scientific features, so the number and the quality maybe of publications, something like this. And then the spatial features, so something that architects are very happy with, so forms as floor plans, functional layout, and so on, so on. And then I had to, okay, and yes, this is all, it was subjective decision to make this list like that, because I was really inspired by the technological, scientific, and operational aspects of, or activities proposed by Mars Reference Architecture 5.0. Okay, so this is a list of analogs I was analyzing. It's not a full list, obviously, but I really wanted to have a certain types. Like I knew that I need to have like some large stations, Arctic stations that are used for these purposes. To have some underwater ones, to have some in extreme environments, some that are in controlled environment, and see what will happen. So if your habitat is not there, do not worry. It was also on purpose to have a certain way of then discussing whether what I've done here in fact works. Okay, how it looked like. So now we were going to go like very quickly. How it looked like in the dissertation. So, for example, you have Aquarius, a small description, layouts, some photos, and then those general knowledge, technological aspects, operational aspects, scientific aspects, and then describing fidelity and so on, like habitat readiness levels or those kind of things. Not every habitat can have like habitat readiness levels. Then maybe they need to be described in mock-ups, because not every habitat is a prototype that goes in the direction of being flight worthy. But yeah, and this is what I had to do for every single habitat and every single habitat and every single habitat. But that was quite important, because then I can quantify it in the form of very big Excel spreadsheet. I think it's a very old file. I opened random one on my computer, because I see that I'm missing some hubs here. But now that this database is here, and the whole thing is this long, because I had to quantify very simply TRL, so from 1 to 6, or from 1 to 9, or spin-off 1 or 0. Yeah, so it's not that complicated, but it took some space, and this is the best thing, I guess, because now you can play with it and you can try to analyze it the way you like, or if you notice that there are some glaring errors, it's easy to change it and make it better. Okay, so this is data gathering part, and then we are going to more subjective parts. So my analysis. So I was analyzing those different data sets from a very different points. I will not go through that because it will be very uninteresting for you. But I will tell you what I decided is interesting at the very end, because the goal of the thesis was to find those determinants, or what determines the shapes, forms, and so on. It was after all this work, and I hope after this presentation, it was quite obvious that what impacts how habitat is constructed, or how it looks like, what is the layout, it's basic information about the desired space logistics or architecture, simulated mission architecture. I think this is the most important one, and the primary research objective. And I think research objective here is also very easy to defend here, because you can see that, or you will see in a moment. Okay, on the typology, because typology proposed here is that we have simulation habitats, something that it would be high seas, LunAres. They are not prototypes, and they are focused on having the right amount of human subjects to do crew dynamic studies. They are on average bigger, they have bigger floor plans, bigger volumes per crew member. They have different. They're using forms that are not that realistic. So maybe it's a simple dome, maybe it's a shipping container, but yeah, they're not in the form of anything that would fly to space. But at the same time, the floor plan is not optimized enough. So you have definitely larger space, and in the function focus on living life functions, or living. So and this is it's research objective to study humans, and you are creating space for humans, and it's not optimized, for example, for system engineering. Prototypes are, and that's why they're smaller, they're more compact. They have a smaller crew size because, yeah, this is not your primary objective to have as many crew members, but the research purpose impacts that very heavily. Then we have biotechnological ones that are really, really big when it comes to living space, but this is only because you have very large areas dedicated for growing food. So subsystems are the most important areas in those kind of habs. In the prototypes, working areas are the most important ones in simulation habitats. The living areas are the most important ones, and then we have adapted habitats. So all those places that were not built with the space mission in mind, but for example, for explorations of different extreme environments. So all those polar stations and underwater structures. These cannot be compared in any way because they were built for different purposes, but nevertheless, using them generates very useful data. But from the architect point of view, it's definitely very difficult to say anything about them. Beside that, well, they were built for different purposes. And this is what they are. And do I have more time, or not necessarily? Because we are. Because I have 2 last slides, and then we can talk a bit about the whole thing. Yeah. Right, okay. Questions, this is what I meant. So the most important part is that typologies are something that are very subjective thing, and you can create your own typology in relation to the thing that is important to you, maybe. And the environment that these habitats are, this is the typology that was important for the scope of my work, and it may or may not be 100% accurate, but it definitely makes the knowledge more organized. And now we can discuss what kind of different criteria we could use, or if in fact those we can have totally different typologies there. But the main giveaway is the data set that we can discuss, modify it, and adjust to have a certain agreement what certain habitats are representing with the state of technological or operational or scientific development. So this is the best thing. And what would be the next step? Or I'm already starting it. We need to I would like to verify my data with the community, so with analog community, but also with space architecture community. So engage with stakeholders for feedback and validation of data and criteria. Then, it was created for my national audience, so translating the results and with added content and validated data will bear the best fruits if I invite as many of you to help me out with it. Because it will boost our understanding of the topic, or we will agree or not agree on certain things, but also it will boost visibility and will definitely engage us in a discussion. And yeah, so my plan was to present it at CHASM. I will be presenting that at EAC 2024 and also during the Space Architecture Symposium in Milan. And that's it. I hope you like it.
The first thing I want to ask is, when is it going to be in English?
Exactly, here is the answer. I think it would be best to first translate the basic data set and then simply engage with the community in order to find the maybe errors or some things that are not, or criteria that need to be added, and then only with added authors maybe create something that will be better recognized and maybe better and more broadly adapted if there will be enough traction for it, because obviously it may go nowhere if no one is interested.
So at the moment we're waiting for the full thesis, but we obviously have to wait until it's defended, I guess. And then based on this data, we're going to implement it on our wiki on CHASM. But obviously, if any of you speaks Polish and wants to help, that would be really appreciated, because except for Leszek, we don't have anyone who's Polish in our team yet.
We will do something about this.
Yes, yeah. I want you over there.
Yeah, sorry, my Polish is way too rusted to be of any use for this project. I loved your kind of slight hint of insanity when you turned around and had your own spreadsheet behind you. It's like, now I have this data.
Now I can
because I love this point in research when you actually stop and realize, like, now I'm the only one in the world who has collected all of that stuff, and now it's not the fun the fun stuff begins. Now, this is a really important work, I think, actually, like looking at the stuff. Like, I don't know whether there has been a systematic review and a systematic collection of like all the floor plans, all the kind of parameters of the station has been done, especially also with like the aesthetic mind of an architect in the back of the head, because many of these things, as you just said, were created from vastly different sort of angles and backgrounds, like engineering, spaceflight, whatever. You pointed it out already. So I think that this is actually really relevant work, and I would encourage you, and I can also like point you to some names, to once this thing is properly defended and vetted, and you're happy with the state that it is in, you're gonna have to have this printed. Like, I want to see this in a book. I want to have someone like have the floor plans properly retraced and then have a beautiful book about that thing, because it's actually something that I would want to buy.
Like, this is like maybe even the end goal, because if we think about like this is a good starting point, but we could add yet another works from other people. Like Christiane has a great review paper of analogs. All of you contributed to like with different kind of research and papers, and created like some sort of compendium of different research papers. Makes sense, but this is something probably for the future. Yeah,
I mean, you either have it standardized in a wiki where you have like a proper sidebar with like a structure for the parameters and everything, and exactly. I think this would be a really valuable tool to kind of have like just imagine all the floor plans, all the maps, kind of overlayable, so you could kind of trace out similarities and stuff like that. I think this is a really important tool. Just, you know, when starting from scratch, designing something new, so you can kind of get inspired by like, okay, do I go circular, do I go rectangular, do I go high or tall or low or anything. I think this is like a really valuable tool. Like, I'm speaking now from the artistic designer art school mindset. I think this is a really important tool. So please go ahead and do this research. All the best for your defense. I think it's going to be good.
Thank you very much.
Cool.
So Leszek, if I understood you right, you've collected all this data. You've done a lot of research to build the table and the data set. I think what you said is one of your next steps is to send that out and ask the community, hey, did I get it all right?
Yes, pretty much. Like, for example, in Milan, there will be like a lot of space architects. There will be like Mark Cohen speaking.
Right.
So he definitely is someone that I would like to show it to. Architects that did like other analogs. So there will be, for example, Barbara Imhoff. So I would like to ask her whether she or Eden ISS data is valid, and if she would like to contribute in any way. Because if I will now engage with the people that like are interested in promoting their work, it will also boost visibility for potential English paper. Yeah.
I think one source, some of that is just historical. You've got what you have in historical information. Some of them are current analogs, so the directors of those analogs would be the source of the most recent information. Because part of your challenge is going to be these analogs evolve over time. You can find maps of MDRS that are old and out of date. They reconfigured it, they've changed it. High seas changes, so there's a little bit of that where you can snap an image of it, but then in a year or two it might change.
This is definitely a snapshot. Like today, Terry was describing 16 missions at FMars. I have like 12 registered here. So and that's also why there's this file. We can change the data, but now it's a snapshot of some
as of
data.
A certain date. This was the layout. These are how many missions, all the stats. But yeah.
So, one request and one question. When is your defense day and is it streamed? And the second...
It's in Polish.
I will root for you anyways. Yeah.
It's okay for him.
The other question is, knowing what you know now, how would you redesign LunAres? Yeah, I know, a loaded question.
I have the whole redesign somewhere on my computer, but I think there are some things that I would, like there's a decision to be made. Either use LunAres as it is as a certain platform and then go further, so we have the whole big terrain and we can have more more analogs there, so maybe more focused on. We were always envisioned to have now something a lot smaller, more ergonomically optimized. So I would simply either, like, I would think I will do something new. I don't know. Like you've been there. We have our EVA area, and one entry, the LunAres Habitat is connected, and there's like also like the back entry. And I was thinking about introducing a small pressurized capsule-like space that would be, I think, in layout something maybe similar to Aquarius, but because this is the right scale maybe for some things, especially in this day of age, like the Canadian astronaut that's going on Axiom 2 mission, Jeremy Hansen, I think. He's like, obviously he's an astronaut, he is a fighter pilot, but his previous experience was like long Aquarius mission, and that's why maybe he was selected, because he knows how to spend 10 days with other people in a very small space. So this is a good training analog maybe, or maybe this a direction that we would take.
Good. Yeah. So just to hop on to what Bill just remarked, like about the versions or the iterations of these stations, I think looking at this field through like the lens of an archaeologist, like a space archaeologist, could also be like a really valid point to kind of also show the evolution or devolution of certain stations, to kind of see that's like MDRS Mark 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or version 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Like you would look at ancient Troy, for instance, where you have like cities that kind of also evolved and then compacted again. So you could actually more or less create a historic record of like how stations also developed. Like,
yeah, there are those historical drawings made by architects of like how medieval cathedrals were expanding, and this is the line from this century, this is the line from that century, and but maybe not looking at the past. I don't like analyzing that. I don't like. We could discuss the future. Because at some point, maybe there will be no need for new habitats, or there is research to be done, sure, but in the end, maybe there will be only a few of them, because they will be mostly focused on training astronauts. I mean, there will be more and more astronauts, but in the end, the question needs to be asked if analogs are something that is happening only in like this century, and later it will vanish from the face of science and architecture, because this is a very unique time and place in our history, and later people will be simply trained on the moon, for example. You don't like the moon will be better analog for like a Mars trip lesson, yes, and it will be already feasible and it will be already established. So maybe also this is important to understand where we are going, or when it will end, because it may end.
Yeah, but still, that's actually a really good point, in my opinion, to do the keeping now, record taking now, because in some point down the road we will look back at that as like history, and like, I mean, there's people driving to Tunisia to kind of see the old Star Wars film sets. I mean, not comparing this to a film set, of course, but still, there's like something will be associated with this time, place and time. So I think it's a really good point to just maintain a record of stuff, and your work kind of will contribute to that, or like Christiana's work, and of course all the other people who are kind of doing this surveys. So it's super topic. I really love it.
True, especially that now we have discussion, or not a discussion, like we are waiting in anticipation what will happen with high seas, and that's a historical site that it would nice to be still, like to have it and so it's operational. Yeah, and do we have any more questions? Okay.
Thank you for the presentation. I was learning a lot, actually. I think it was very insightful. You were speaking and mentioning that probably in the future we might not even need analog habitats on Earth. And you said that probably we can use those that we will build on the moon, for example. So I was thinking, what do you think are some innovations or emerging trends that will shape the future of analog space habitats. Now thinking that it might not necessarily be just on Earth, but also on the moon.
So I really do believe that what is a big chance for most of the analogs is the current private space flight boom, private human space flight, and the places to test, to train, to observe your future space tourists or specialists or whatever could be, it could be argued that it could be analogs that are serving this purpose. So maybe this is quite important thing to consider, that both the extreme environment ones will be important and the ones that are more like small training centers, both will have a fair share of use when it comes to training. So that makes me somehow optimistic about the future and the continuity of phenomena of the analogs. But we'll see. Also, yeah, the very interesting venture is also thinking about underwater habitats. But should space industry try to conquer underwater, or we should leave it to people that are mostly interested in underwater exploration? I don't know. Those two topics seem very similar, but also maybe it's rude to try and take also this kind of expedition mindset from the underwater focused people. I don't know.
Thank you.
Okay, very well. I
have one question, if I may.
Well, one question, and then afterwards we're going for a nap. Perfect, go ahead.
Awesome, thank you so much. I actually would question the idea of this analogs and everything else related to that being vanished anytime soon. And the reason behind it is that you are teaching really specific skills, and we are learning really specific skills during the missions. And those skills will be very needed in the future simply for survival. So my question would be rather, would you consider bringing these ideas to the schools and teaching children from the primary schools, for example, to live and to adapt very quickly to very much, challenging environments?
Difficult question, and I think but it inspired me to answer a totally different question. Like educational and like our habitat, thankfully, is very safe, and a lot of students are coming here, so they're learning very important lessons about how they behave in the society, how they behave with in a working environment, and so on, so on. So, and this is extremely important for many people on like this young stage of their development. So totally yes, that would be awesome. But I wouldn't recommend going to Arctic and trying to do the same thing, because this is already dangerous, and there is some scale and where that should be respected when it comes to danger. And your question also inspired me to some other things, like like a place that we could learn a lot from is probably the defense sector, especially when it comes to shelters, bunkers, but this knowledge is not easily available. So the question is, maybe we should do it the other way around. Can we suggest or try to convey an idea that maybe defense sector could use our experience in space analogs? Like it's like quite a timely topic when it comes to my country. Like we are now building quite a lot of shelters.
Or can you offer this? Can you offer, for example, trips or analog missions?
Yeah.
The not university students, but maybe primary students, kind of a tiny version of that, so they can learn also this type of skills.
Yeah, I think we will continue this topic later, because I don't know if I understood it correctly, and I don't want to fake the answer. Okay, guys, I think it was. a pleasure presenting to you guys.
Thank you, Leszek.